So Jana and I had a challenge when we started doing this presentation today. We said we want to do a presentation with no bullet points. So that means that on every screen there's just like a picture or like one or two words, which means that all of the bullet points, which normally would be in the presentation, are down in our notes. That's why we're pulling them up.
All right. I think I have it here.
Nice. Thanks.
We're good to start.
So, thank you, first of all, for inviting us here today. We want to talk today about software architecture, how code base develops over time, how it changes over time, and at what point it's necessary to make bigger changes. And that specifically from the point of view of a startup, and in our case, Makerist. And
All right. There you go. Okay.
Did you do that? You do it, okay.
I did that.
So Makerist is Europe's largest crafting platform. We are a marketplace for digital patterns, sewing, knitting, crochet, quilting, everything you can think of in the DIY world. We're also a content producer for how-to videos and an e-commerce shop for wool and fabrics. I'm Amber Riedl. I'm one of the co-founders of Makerist. I founded it in 2013 with my partner Axel Heinz, and this is Jana.
Hi, I'm Jana Kazmina. So yeah, you founded Makerist 5 years ago, and I joined 4.5 years ago. In the beginning, I was setting up our e-commerce department, and then 2 years ago, I switched over to our development department, and am now the head of product.
Making Jana uniquely positioned to talk today.
I'll try my best. So, Amber, but maybe you can tell us, how did people actually traditionally learned crafts?
Yeah, you guys remember Bulo was talking about his grandma and how she was knitting. Actually, this is how people have traditionally been learning handicrafts for hundreds and hundreds of years, being passed down from grandmothers and mothers to children in the home. But we saw kind of a change in the last 60, 70 years, where more and more women entering the workforce, having less time to teach that in the family, and also the whole idea of crafting taking kind of negative associations, especially in Germany, having the associations that people are doing it because they can't afford to buy proper clothes, right? So the whole skill set that generally got passed down was, for some generations, kind of lost, for our generation. This was the idea that Axel and I had when we first started Makerist. So we thought we want to be the how-to platform for sewing, knitting, crochet. We want to do these educational videos that people can book online. In the case that they can't learn from their grandma, then they can learn from this video class. So this was how we started. But being a startup, we had to test many different things along the way. So we started from the point of videos that people want to learn, but then we thought, well, if they're going to learn, they're going to need to also have fabrics and materials to make their projects. So we started selling fabric boxes, material boxes with all the sets. And then we thought, well, maybe they don't like that color that's in the set. Maybe they want to pick the colors on their own. So then we did a total e-commerce shop, having like all the materials. And finally, we said, well, maybe they like, they want to learn how to make the dress that we're showing in the video, but they don't like that dress. Maybe they want to make a different dress, like with a different shape. And so then we set up the patterns marketplace, where they could pick from thousands of patterns from all kinds of independent designers. And because we're a startup, developing all of these different revenue streams, we developed over the years many, many different features.
We started initially as a video platform. We had an embedded video player. Then we thought, oh, we should make it possible that our trainers and our users can talk to each other. So we had like a Q&A feature developed. Then we thought, oh, those materials boxes, they should have different kind of variances. So we added those kind of features. Then we thought, well, maybe French people will like us as well. So let's do different language and do a French platform. How about those English-speaking people? Let's do an English platform. Well, they want to pay in a different currency. We need to introduce currencies. So over time, we developed a lot of features and functionalities and coded that into our web application.
So while we tested different revenue streams over the years, we collected tons and tons of data, which we also looked at and made business decisions from. And this data showed us that while we had developed so like 3 or 4 different revenue streams, our biggest market opportunity was in the ebooks marketplace, which is a different point from where we actually started also in code.
Yeah, from a technical perspective, we still had one big web application. Sounds not as a problem, but it became one. We started the website as a video platform, and over time, hundreds of features and business processes were added on. Everything built in this one application, aka in one software, and with our revenue streams, after a while, we saw, well, some of those business parts are not bringing too much revenue for us. We don't really need them, but we still had them all in our code, making the whole application and the software really noisy.
So we tried to make like a really simple analogy, and it's basically like, imagine if our team had developed as the code did. Many people sitting at one table, all talking at the same time, not using email or Slack. So it was very noisy.
Yeah.
And this was the result.
Yeah. So if you look at this, it actually looks like a table where people are sitting and screaming to each other and trying to talk to each other. Well, this is the monolith. Sounds scary, is a bit scary. This is an actual extract from our code structure. And this is how our model diagram looked at some part, and not even all dependencies are shown. So I think this is enough to display the monolith. Why is it called monolith? Imagine a very big stone, really unflexible, growing faster, and then in the middle you want to touch some point. It's like really difficult to get there. So the problem is, it's not bad decisions or something that we made in the past. We were a startup and had to try out. It's just from time to time you need to reorganize.
It's like if you are like me, when you're working on your laptop or your computer, you're just like downloading all of your files and not really taking the time to organize them properly into different folders and different structures, because you always think like, oh, I can do that later. So this is kind of the same way that the software developed over time. We have even a saying in our office, it's called "It's startup style." That means better done than perfect. Yeah. So over time, this is, I think, why it's important to imagine it like from our perspective. I think many people here are probably coming from like bigger companies or corporates. You think and plan in totally different time frames and have a different amount of resources. And as a startup, you're always planning quite short term, trying to do things really as quickly as possible and just trying to really grab opportunities.
Yeah. This is actually, I don't know if you got it, this is a cup in our office, because that was really a saying that many of us heard, and there's also a different saying for that, better done than perfect. Oh, you mentioned that, yeah. So this was true for many cases, and this was really important for us, also, of course, for the development. So you see market opportunity, you have to be fast, so that's why you develop something really fast and bring it out to the market. But with every feature you build quick and dirty, you sum up your technical debt. And every time So after a while, every time we wanted to implement a new feature or fix some bugs, we underestimated how long it actually takes. We started to code or started to investigate something, and then we figured out that there are so many dependencies, and the code is partly so fragile that almost every time something breaks again. So it means that it took us even longer to bring something out to the market or to fix something. Old code, not used code. The code base of the monolithical architecture that we faced at some point had really old pieces of code inside, and those parts in a web application are also always executed. And what is this usually leading to? A slower website, and we all know speed is a crucial part when it comes to conversion. And yeah, also, since we focused on certain business aspects after a while, because we know our data and we saw, okay, we should skip that and we should focus on that, we had to actually do the same for our code base. And why? Yeah, you remember this, the monolithical structure. Too many people, too many code parts are talking at the same time to each other. Every process, every code part is run at the same time. Way too much data is sent back and forth, and this is not necessary. One solution could be microservices. It's a buzzword many of you maybe heard, maybe not. I can explain it briefly. Basically, we made the decision that we want to restructure our code in the same way we restructured our company at some point. So in the beginning, we were like 7 to 8 people sitting actually at one table and making decisions together. Then we grew. At some point, we were 40 people, and so we started to organize us in departments, with heads of departments. And this is actually something that microservices can be compared with. So we have to identify a bounded context within our code, meaning like business processes that belong to each other. And then each bounded context, each little square, is a candidate for example, a dedicated application. And the new and smaller applications could then communicate over well-defined channels and talk to each other and send information to each other. Oh.
What kind of advantages would this have, Jana?
So smaller apps are much easier to scale. So for example, if we have a shop app and we have a blog app and we have a sale, why should we scale up the blog app? Makes no sense, because we know in this moment most of our users will be shopping and not reading articles. So that's why we scale up the shop app and not the blog app as well. And it's also much cheaper.
So it also makes business sense at one point.
Yeah. Another plus point is that if one of those apps is down, the others can still run. So we experience that if one part breaks and we are not able to execute our web application, well, the whole website is down, and this is really, really bad. And with smaller dedicated applications, we can avoid this. So this is again the microservices little diagram, and actually we already started to implementing that, and we did it so far for 2 big business processes that we have. It's our whole payout accounting money system, and it's a portal for our partners, for our business partners. And we took them out and built them dedicated applications. And So the logic happens now in this separate apps, and the data, basically only the needed data is sent via APIs. So all the other pods receive only the data they need to function. And yeah, this is what we did, and we are planning to continue and thinking about many different kind of business processes that we might take out and build dedicated applications for that. So, no more screaming. Yeah, a clean software architecture. It might be microservices. It does not need has to be microservices. It's just about after 4 to 5 years as a startup, you really should have a look into your code architecture and clean up. And this is the key for a sustainable web application.
Basically, we would probably do it the same way if we would start now, because as a startup, you always just try to do it as quick and as fast as possible. But after a certain amount of time, it's going to be necessary to make changes.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it's a theoretically good idea, but it's because it's actually going to be a great business idea, because it's going to prevent server outages. It's going to be cheaper and more efficient to shore up the servers if you're having a big sale. And it's going to make the development of new features faster in the future. So it's a painful process to switch.
But a necessary
But
one.
a necessary one.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, hey.
Not no more screaming. Scream for this really personal ideas of Amber and Jana. Thank you for that. I've got a question. When you were talking about also old ladies, I have this old lady in my neighborhood. I think she's 80 years old, and she knows everything, how to get scratches out of my jeans and how to get coffee from my shirt. And I think she's also knitting. Thank God she's not knitting for me, but she is doing that. Have you ever thought about hiring old people for your company as a chief inspiring officer? I think that this would be a great idea, having a 83-year-old CIO in the company. Or do you have that?
Well, we don't. What we don't have is like people that are doing products for us, like knitted hats and scarves that we're selling, because we try to focus only on digital products. But of course, it's a great idea to get them to share knowledge about fixing things.
Yeah,
and
that's what I meant.
things.
Yeah, because they can inspire your fellow workers for having new ideas. And
we have definitely content creators who been asking like their mother or grandmother for like really tips and tricks, because we publish content for crafting and like want to really say, here are the 10 best tips to whatever, sew your jacket. And so I know that some of them been doing like little field studies, asking around for the hacks.
Yeah, I was behind stage and was always imagining how that would be if my grandmother would come to a meeting, $1 million meeting with you, and you said, this is Mrs. Falter, she's our chief inspiring officer, and she drinking her beer. I like that idea, so perhaps you like that too. And okay, do you have any questions to our speakers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. My question is about cross-team communication. How do you guys ensure that changes in one part of the system or in one particular microservice doesn't propagate errors or breakages across to others, especially when it comes to humans communicating each other? How do you guys communicate these changes and make sure the teams accommodate for each other? Yeah.
So this kind of switch process, at some point noticing, okay, we have here a really big bud of wool, of code, of wool, I want to say, and then starting the process, well, we have to do something about it, we have to clean up. It started over a year ago, and it's a really long and painful process. So you have to really get a lot of people involved in there, and you have to take the people who are actually working with this part of the code, meaning the business processes, meaning the departments. You have to get them from the beginning to make sure you're building the right product for them. and you make sure you at the end have a system that not only them can use, but which also fits in the rest of the company. So it's a lot of people are involved into that process, and it's, yeah.
Within the team, we're using an OKR system to also decide which things we do first and in what order. So we're always prioritizing based on what are the main company objectives, and then doing projects with the development team. This is like our most scarce resource in the company, more scarce than money, more scarce than time, really getting the developers to do stuff. Prioritizing always in terms of effort and effect.
Yeah.
I don't know if your question was maybe more related to like how to bring out then the different apps. So like we have a staging area where it's tested internally. Maybe you want to say something about this process?
Was your question answered or not? Otherwise, you maybe have to kind of.
I'm thinking, in terms of technical changes into one microservice affecting the other microservice. How does that team communicate to other teams? We are going to roll out these new features. You might be affected by this.
Yeah.
Do you have weekly meetings, or is it purely the responsibility of the product owner, or do the microservice architects all meet? Something.
Yeah. So we don't have separate teams yet for the single microservices. We are a team of 8 people. We are one Scrum team, so we are pretty well informed by each other because we do daily stand-ups and basically the traditional Scrum process. So every time someone needs to make a change, this person is responsible to take care that everything else, what this change affects, is also solved. And yeah.
Any further questions? Ask the old lady in the neighborhood. She will explain it to you. Yeah.
Thanks. A completely separate application for each element, each organizational requirement is great in a microservices dream, but it also sounds like a lot of duplication. So do you guys have any systems or practices to help make sure that at least things are similarly structured so there's some consistency across your whole code base? Or does every application do routing totally differently?
The goal is to have a certain tech stack up that we use for all the microservices for all the application. So a microservice does not necessarily need to be a dedicated application. It can be also that you take some code parts, clean really up really nicely, and this is what we did with our accounting, for example. It's not a single application, but it's completely newly structured. And while our partner portal, for example, is a completely new single application. So for every time we want to take out something out, we have to see how do we going to do it? Is it going to be a separate application, or is it going to be basically really hard refactoring?
Okay, so
was a thumbs up, so I guess your answer was, the answer was good.
So twittering was yesterday, tomorrow is knittering.
Yeah,
okay, so Riedl and Jana Kazmina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.